Welcome to Brightly, You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul-driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hello, Tracy.
Hi, Amy.
I'm wondering if you're feeling soul driven right now.
Ooh, no. Yeah, how about you?
A little bit, but I feel like this is what we're going to be talking about. It's so topical and on everyone's mind. And I think we all need some advice around what you're going to be talking about.
Why does that come to mind then, the soul-driven piece when it comes? So today we're going to be talking about tradition.
Because I think that with traditions, we don't think about where our soul or heart is. We just think about this is the way it's always done. This is the way it has to be.
Yeah, there's definitely that aspect of where you currently fall in line, and especially for females where you fall in the matriarchal line, because it kind of seems like that's where tradition, the responsibility of upholding tradition comes from. Do you feel like that in your family as well?
It veered off a little bit in our family, although I do feel like my one sister really does hold a lot of the traditions. And then I've had some offshoots of that, but yeah, so I'm not sure if that holds true in my family or not.
I mean, for my family, it gets a bit complicated because, and also how you describe whether or not it's extended family or not. So I'm single, never married, no children. So to me, my family is still the nuclear family I grew up with, even though we've all have, kind of sprouted off onto our own little vines. But there are 5 daughters. And then my extended family is just my aunt and uncle and their daughter, and then one set of grandparents. And so we are 8 women, like we're very strong. When the matriarch of our family that upheld all of our extended family holiday traditions passed, it has since kind of leapfrogged. And then as we've had divorces, marriages, new babies, the next generations being born and things kind of maturing and growing, it's kind of stopped being a singular event and is now different people hold different events, or different years different people hold events. And so tradition has changed for us, like depending on what year it is and who we get to in attendance, if that makes any sense.
No, it does make sense. Yeah.
Sometimes for Thanksgiving, we have some nieces and nephews. Sometimes they go to their dad. Sometimes for Christmas, we do a big extended family thing. And then sometimes it's just kind of a smaller thing because people alternate what years they celebrate with what families, with different in-laws and that balance of things. But so since some major holidays are upon us, it made me think of the traditions in our lives. And, we talk a lot about ritual, we talk a lot about cycle, and I feel like tradition is just another word for those things.
Yeah, you're right.
But one thing that comes to mind for me with the word tradition versus ritual is that tradition, like ritual to me, is kind of a little bit more internal, or very inclusive and kind of a smaller group and really intentional, whereas tradition is kind of like the broader community, whether that's your extended family or your culture, your community as a whole. But I notice a lot, both in social media and in like Hollywood movies and TV shows, like it's such a trope that it's a drag. Like holiday traditions are a drag that we're forced to go, that, your crazy uncle's not going to stop spouting off, on whatever topic, and kids are going to be insane and people are going to fight and bicker, and you don't want to go there. You'd rather be doing something else. But then you also see that part right now where like traditions are so full of emotion and we miss so much in the past year to 2 years that people really want to get back to tradition and connecting
Mhm.
with others. And what does tradition feel like to you? Are you the Hollywood trope, or are you like the overly sentimental?
I was always overly sentimental. And in fact, Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday because it always felt like around my birthday. So I
Around your
was
birthday?
like, this is for me, whatever. And in fact, at one point, we carried Thanksgiving. We hosted Thanksgiving for both sides of our family. So for my husband's family and for my family. And that lasted for a little while. And then, so we had Thanksgiving a lot. And then something happened where I just went, nope, I'm done. That's it. I'm done. And not
Mm,
only was I done with inviting people, I was done with cooking for it.
yeah.
And it was like, we can go out to eat or we can not do anything. It's fine either way. And then I actually got to the point where I was just like, I don't even care anymore about it. But there are other traditions that were more, they were more organic traditions that grew out of the tradition. So, like Thanksgiving, what would happen after Thanksgiving is the day after Thanksgiving, my mom and my sister Patty and I would meet downtown. We used to meet downtown St. Paul, then we'd meet downtown Minneapolis, and we would go to Dayton's, Macy's, whatever it was called at the time.
It's
And
Dayton's again.
it is Dayton's again. And we would have lunch in the beautiful room. It was like dark wood and beautiful chandeliers, and it'd be decorated for Christmas. We would have this beautiful lunch, like an hour and a half long lunch. Then we would shop, not for, like, we weren't Black Friday shopping. We were just like, look at this cute hat. What do you think of this? Oh, I like this jacket. Like, we just had fun. Then we'd go back to the restaurant and have what's called a poinsettia. And that is champagne with cranberry juice. And then we'd go home. And that was like, that tradition actually lasted from before I was married. So I was, since I was like 20 until my mom, like the year before my mom died. So 40 some years that tradition lasted. And then the other tradition that I love is decorating the Christmas tree with the kids. And we would, and each, like, I have two kids who are much older than our youngest. But so this lasted for a very long time. We always would play Chipmunk's Christmas album. That's what had to be played. Have hot cocoa and decorate for Christmas. And that had nothing to do with like any extended family. It was just us doing that. So it's like it's traditions that were offshoots from other traditions.
Well, and what I love about those two stories that you shared, or those two traditions, is it sounds like they really filled your cup.
Oh, right. Tracy, you're absolutely right. There is nothing draining or exhausting or overwhelming about them. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I think the difference between that and the tropes we see in Hollywood, which, when you're watching movies and TV, it's about stories, right? And things going exceptionally well isn't the best storytelling,
No.
right? You need the drama. But what I think those tropes are really showing, though, is kind of, I think you alluded to it earlier, is you're kind of forced into doing things just because it's how you've always done it. There's less heart behind it. You get disconnected from it. You get resentful of it. And as soon as you have resentment, like, it's done. Anything in a relationship or an activity, as soon as you let resentment in, that's like the
Yeah.
kiss of death for it. So what I want to talk about today is like avoiding those pitfalls of things becoming like an I have to. and there's some situations where you just have to have boundaries, right? Because you want to maintain relationships. But like, how
Yeah.
can you look at traditions as a way of things and look forward to them and be intentional so that they do fill your cup and brighten you up and brighten up those around you?
Yeah. You
So
know, I feel like this last year gave us sort of this break from these traditions, right? So it was almost like a way to step back and say, is this what I want to put back in my life? Is this something that does fill, like you said, fill my cup? Is this something that we should continue, or do we need to look at it differently? This happened with us for a different thing too, where we had to just, my husband and I had to just say, okay, this is ridiculous. What can we do differently? And we just brainstormed different ways of doing a tradition and came up with an idea. And then that's what we did moving forward. So it's sort of that whole, like, you really do, once again, have to ask yourself, how am I feeling about this? Like you said, are you feeling resentment? Are you feeling overwhelmed? And figure out a different way.
I love that. So tradition holds a lot of different purposes when you kind of look at the word, or the definition of the word,
Oh,
or
yeah.
just how people think of it. But ultimately, it's when there's a tradition, it's a transference of beliefs, rites, and rituals from generation to generation. And I think when, depending on
Mm.
who's in charge of that transference, that's where the differentiation between like food, family, fun, friends, celebration, and we do this because it's how we do it, and you best well show up and do it how we've ever done it, right? Like it really depends on who has ownership of it, and then how people show up too. Like, I have abstained from events in the past that weren't filling my cup because it filled other people's cup. And I could tell that I was showing up as the Debbie Downer, right? And like just not fully
Oh.
present, not fully myself. And that
Mhm.
wasn't enhancing my relationships with any of them individually or together. And it was creating resentment in me in the long term. And so I pulled out. And then there are other events that I show up, and I show up in full force because damn it, I love this holiday. I love this tradition. I am the one pushing it forward and being like the social chair for the family to make sure it happens. But so other purposes, it's about passing of customs. It's kind of a routine, or we talk about cycles throughout the year. It's something you kind
Yeah.
of, can kind of look
Something you
forward
can
to.
always, yeah, you can count on it, right?
Mm-hmm. It kind of
Yeah.
marks time in a way. It's a
Oh,
way to connect
yeah.
and share with others.
Mhm.
It's also, I mean, especially when you look at, how society treats certain holidays, it's a form of escapism, right? Like, there's the last 4 to 6 weeks of the year don't really count, right? Things kind of slow down. People take more time off. People have more things that they start to do.
Well, I would say things slow down at work, but
Work,
things
yes,
speed
thank
up
you.
in your, yeah, speed up in
Yes.
your like in your other life, right?
But
Because
even when you look at like year-end reflection lists, nobody
yeah.
includes December. Like when they're like top songs of the year, it ends at November 15th. But like it just, this time of year is just kind of, it's a different pace, it's different
Mm.
focuses. But it also, when you look at traditions and customs, it brings a sense of security, and kind of like you were saying, like it keeps coming, right? Like you're
Mhm.
gonna cycle back to it eventually. It's a
Mhm.
connection to the past, especially those that we've lost, and ways to continue honoring or remembering them. It's a
As
way to
long
create
as we
new.
actually do honor and remember them.
Well, and with that, it's a way to create new memories of those that
Yeah.
are currently around.
Mhm.
And then when kind of doing some, preliminary kind of research, or Googling, I should say, for this episode, there's a lot of blog posts and articles and just different things that brought it back to a sense of identity, and that it gives you this
Oh,
connection to who you are and where you came from, that builds confidence in children and people as a whole, because you're more connected and know where you came from, which I never really thought of it that way.
no. I didn't, I never thought of it that way either. In fact, I'm wondering if some people think of like when you get together with other people, your sense of identity is shifted to what it was as you were growing up, right? Because it feels
Yeah.
like that sometimes, where all of a sudden, once again, you're the baby of the family and everybody's making fun of you and whatever, right?
And that's, I think who attends the events is so key, because I have never understood or identified with that trope of like the aunt that comes up and is like, when are you getting married? When are you having babies? Or like
Mm-hmm.
people who really pigeonhole you to who you are, because the people that I'm going to go and see on Thanksgiving are the people I just saw a week ago, are the people who I celebrated Halloween with, or the people who I see at least once a month or I talk to regularly. These are not people who I only see once a year, but there are people who have much larger extended families, or
Yeah.
because of where they live in the country or the world, or just what's going on in their lives, they do only see them certain times a year. And to your point, I mean, those transitional stages of life, like somebody who's currently in college, right? And like just that period of time, 18 to your mid 20s, where you're finding yourself, how challenging and difficult it must be to go back to the holidays and not have that change acknowledged or honored.
Yeah, that is difficult. Although, along with that, it's also that is where that sort of security comes from too. It's like, oh, well, I'll be with like, this is something I can count on in this time of my life when everything's uncertain, right?
Right.
Ah, yeah.
Well, and then on the flip side too of that, is nostalgia, right? So maybe not that
Mm-hmm.
pigeonholing people in who or what they are, but just, transporting yourself back to the smells, the sights, and the sounds. It's a lot. It's why so many people in 2020 had a really hard time of not doing things. It's because they had all this stuff that they're so used to, and then it was just felt like a loss to not have it. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
for me, I just recreated it all at home. Like, I was like, okay, I usually have those are usually the foods that I have. I'm going to make them still. I'm going to do them for me. I'm going to have hella leftovers, but I'm still going to do it. And I'm going to FaceTime people, right? Like, still try and have some
Fun.
semblance of it. And so, by still having like my great grandma Kay's meatballs, I mean, I've since made them vegetarian. Sorry, Grandma Kay. Like, I still kind of felt like I was still participating in the tradition of Christmas, even though I was alone watching, parades by myself in my living room.
So I love that you just knew that this is what you needed to recreate this for yourself. I love that. And once again, it's because I think you're self-aware and you understand what it is you need and what would help you get through a difficult time. Um, and I do think you do have to kind of slow down and think about that. So I didn't get to find out what your favorite tradition is.
I know that was a question that I came up with for the show, and I really have been struggling with having a personal answer. I was so glad you had such good or vivid ones. For me, the challenge with tradition, and I think why I am so mindful of holding on to what I know I need and like, and then also being intentional with creating my own is my parents got divorced when I was 13. And so our traditions kind of morphed.
Mhm.
And then my mom got remarried, and then our traditions kind of morphed. Then my sisters started getting married and having babies. Our traditions kind of morphed, right? And so I feel like, for the past 20, 25 years, my traditions have just consistently been evolving. And I'm just been pretty good at moving with the flow. And I've been trying to create my own so that the years when I do find that I'm by myself, or like, I don't want to feel excluded, right? Like, as people create their
Mhm.
own family traditions, as they have babies and like things change, I've started creating some new ones. So a newer one I created with my parents, where before, usually half of us were living with my parents even as adults. Like, we were just, as we were adjusting to adulthood and stuff, and grad school and babies and all this. And so Christmas morning, or I would find myself still at my parents. So Christmas Eve, we'd do some sort of broader family event, and then we'd all spend the night at my mom's, or all end up back there. And then I'd do like a movie during the day with my dad and have the evening by myself. now that everyone's kind of more settled and we're all home, my parents on Christmas Day now travel to all the individual homes to see all the different grandbabies. And
Wow.
right? But then they end with me and we do board games and booze and food because I don't have any kids. And so I've really enjoyed just getting to play games, and then I get to host a little bit, and then that gives me something to do Christmas morning too, since I don't have any kids to do the big present or exchange or anything. It gives me something to do, preparing to host. And one thing I always watch the White Christmas while wrapping presents every year. I now the day after Thanksgiving is always when you decorate. And that was that way when I was a kid. Like, oh my gosh, I'm sure my mom is happy I don't live with her now, because anything that would delay that, I was like, it's unacceptable. And I would just start setting up our artificial tree myself. Just absolutely unacceptable. There were some days or some years, Thanksgiving 8 p.m. Tracy's getting the base ready of the tree. At least, like, we don't have to put stuff on it, but like tomorrow we're ready.
Okay, this is so funny because I'm thinking of my mom, who was not a fan of fall, like pumpkins and oranges. She wasn't a fan of that. She loved Christmas. So let me tell you, it was decorated for Christmas on like Thanksgiving dinner. Yes. There was Christmas decorations already.
Yes. I love lights. I love all that stuff. And so that's definitely something I still do in my own home. I'm big. Like, I try and attend, it's different every year here because we have so much, but we have so many different light festivals or just different neighborhoods to go through. I used to work for an employer that we would go and see the Christmas Carol at the Guthrie. They do it every year. And so they would take us all to go do that, so just little things like that. And then also finding ways, with everybody staying so busy, to still do things with friends. So like a new thing I'm hoping to start this year, my friend Rosie and I guess Psycho Susie's here in Minneapolis turns into a Christmas wonderland during this time of year. I just saw it in the news. And so my friend Rosie and I are going to get all gussied up and then just go to dinner there. We love Psycho Susie's anyways. Why not go and celebrate the holidays?
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find ways to have little traditions every year. So whether it's a movie or a type of food. Oh, I was a complete liar. We have a family tradition of making Chex Mix. My older sister. My Grandma Margaret was amazing at it. Passed down the recipe to my sister, who's a total liar. And she's holding on to that secret recipe. She's telling me it's just what's on the box and you just add extra butter and seasonings. No. But so my tradition is her making me Chex Mix or me making me Chex Mix. And it is.
I love it. Oh, yeah. I forgot. Yes, I do have. There's another favorite tradition. And in fact, so with my youngest son, we watch Elf.
Oh, fun.
Every year together. But then we have to be like, because of course he doesn't live at home anymore. And so it's like, you can't watch it before we watch, like, do not watch it. Do not do that. So it's just this, just a silly little thing, but I
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many different things. We celebrate Christmas Eve every year as a family. And sometimes there's multiple events, which is really nice depending on the weather. So it's always something to look forward to. But yeah, but then as we've talked about before, Thanksgiving is a tricky one for both of us, right? So there's some areas in life where breaking tradition. So whether I shared, there's just a lot of evolution kind of going on throughout the family and extended family. And it's kind of just a natural break, or just things kind of fall off or new things happen. But I'm also at this point in my life of trying to reflect both in what I do at a personal level and then at like a macro or a societal level. So case in point, Columbus Day. I know that's not really a tradition or event many people would like gather and celebrate together, but just acknowledging it's not an okay holiday, right? And what can we replace that with and honor instead?
And actually it has been replaced in many areas with, Indigenous Persons Day. So, but just the fact that you look at many calendars and it still says Columbus Day. It's like, really, people, really? And I know that it's hard for Italian Americans to kind of let go of that, how they view, this Columbus was Italian. And so like, that's just a hard thing for them to let go of. But I think it does need to be let go of. And the same thing with Thanksgiving. It's, we, not to get too divisive here, but I think we were sold a lie. And
yeah, nobody has good PR like the English, right? Like,
right?
way to spin it.
And not that it's a bad thing to get together with family and give thanks for something, but stop trotting out the Pilgrims and the Native Americans. Just stop that narrative.
That's the challenge for me right now is I no longer, nor did I ever really outside of, elementary and middle school, but like celebrate it as like the Pilgrims and the Native Americans, as you said. But how do you, it's always been to me as an adult of just a time you get together with family, celebrate, have those traditional foods, explore those rituals. So how do you kind of reconcile that with the fact that it's on a day in which the nation and many people are celebrating the not so pleasant aspects of it, right? So like, how do you maintain your personal celebration and yet distance yourself from the parts that you've since learned more about and no longer fit? And then also for me, Thanksgiving's really challenging because I'm vegetarian. And so
I know.
I'm not in it to tell anybody their business or anything, but I also don't want to be the guest that comes with a list of dietary restrictions when I'm the only one, or the one that doesn't trust the food. Like, did they know what they could and couldn't put in certain things? Like, just because there isn't meat in it doesn't mean it's necessarily okay for me to eat. And then also just being around certain things, on the table and things like that, personally become challenging. And so there are some years when I've just stepped out of it. And then there are years like this year where I was like, hey, am I invited? Because I want to come. Because last,
am I invited? I love that.
Am I invited? I did. My mom got the, hey, am I invited to Thanksgiving this year? And she's like, yeah, of course you are. And it was like, okay, cool. Are you willing to make me food? She's yes. It's like, well, I don't think I've gone in 3 years, so this is really nice.
Yeah. So I don't think, I'm trying to think the last time. I feel like we haven't celebrated Thanksgiving in, 22, like maybe 7 years.
Yeah.
6 or 7 years honestly, for us.
I'm just looking forward to, and I feel bad because my mom as a hostess does, days worth of event planning and getting ready and things like that. But to me, it's no different than like the random Taco Tuesday or Monday night pizzas that they host, in which we just get together and the kids run around, and then I try and get people to play rummy with me. Like, that's just what I'm looking forward to.
I think for me, it was that the alternative to us having it, I didn't want to do the alternative. Now, the funny thing is for a few years there, the youngest and I would travel to my sister's house for dessert on Thanksgiving, because then I would see that family, because it felt like we were doing more things with Rick's side of the family than we were with my side of the family. And so it was, it almost became like, well, that's not fair. And that's not what traditions are about either, right? There should be no scorekeeping. And so once again, like, the resentment sort of raised its head. And so it was just easier. Like last year, like I said, I think it was my husband's favorite holiday season last year, because nobody did anything and he didn't feel obligated to say no to anything because there was nothing going on.
Well, and I think, so this is a great segue, and you'll talk more later about this, but our next episode is on boundaries. And I think traditions are so heavy with expectations when they are so heavily stooped in what we've always done. But
Mhm.
relationships ebb and flow, your own personal needs ebb and flow. And so I think it's so much better when someone's like, oh, I can't come or I don't want to come, to be like, oh, you're going to be so missed. When can we next get together? Versus, well, I can't
Why
believe you're
not?
not coming, right?
Yeah.
Like your grandma's going to be so upset. Things like that. Like it's how we personally react. Like when the
Mhm.
overall thing is we're going to miss you being there, right? Like whether or not that person's there doesn't mean the holiday will or will not happen, but you'll miss them. I
Even though
recently,
it feels like it won't happen for some reason.
so my iPhone photos recently reminded me that about 5 years ago or so, we had Christmas Eve at my aunt's house on a year when her daughter was at her in-laws instead. And I proceeded to, for 4.5 hours, send her pictures of things around the house and just said, this thing misses you, for like 4.5 hours. Sometimes they were like her mom's little Christmas knickknacks. It was different food. Sometimes it was like someone's elbow. Like I was really like, Brooke, we miss you, and I want to make sure you know it. And you're the person I talk to the most at these things anyway. So I'm just going to keep talking to you, even
That
if you don't
is very
respond.
dear. Like you were
And
committed to that.
I was committed to the bit. And I now have a really funny series of photos. I don't even know if she remembers that, but like, instead of being like, God, Brooke, why didn't you come? Or, getting mad at her, ignoring her, I found a way to continue to pester her in a lovingly way. But then I remember that night, like, because so many people were at the in-laws or kids couldn't come or things like that, we ended up having this really intimate, intense sparkle game that is now one of my favorite memories ever. And then my mom fell asleep
Yeah.
in the living room and we all took pictures with her asleep behind us.
Oh my gosh.
One of the best photos I ever took was of that night. And so instead of us all being super upset over the losses, like it created a new memory and kind of a new tradition. Like now when we have those times when people can't come, we have different traditions that we follow when they're not there that are held more closely to us, right? They're a little bit more
Yeah.
intimate.
And
Uh,
I think that that is just so important for everyone to remember that when someone can't come or chooses not to come, they have their own personal, really good reason to them for not doing that. And let's not burden them with guilt or shame or whatever weird projection we're going to shine on to them. Like, let's just let them have that space. And I love what you said. Oh, you'll be missed. Like,
you'll be missed.
you'll be missed. Thank you for letting me know, whatever. And just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think it's so important when trying to honor traditions, and especially traditions that encompass larger groups of people you don't see very often. Just pay attention to
Mhm.
how are you taking care of yourself. So we'll talk about boundaries in the next episode, but then also, what are you honoring for you? Like there were certain events in the family that didn't bring me joy, but some that did. So I would just come late. And the host knew why it was, but like I took care of myself that way by skipping the
Mhm.
things I didn't need to
Mhm.
be a part of. Then there were other things that I did where, especially when I was still a teenager, and a child of divorce, and then my grandparents are divorced. And then, there was one year I attended like 5 or 6 Thanksgivings because I had a license and I wanted to see all these different people. And for whatever reason, everybody was hosting their own that year. And I had a blast, but part of that, it was really hard to leave events, right? Because people were still having fun. And so I just,
That
honored.
actually, you are 100% right. And that's the one thing that caused us to change how we did a certain thing, is because we had to like get to an event, be in it, and then just be like, we got to pack up and go, and get to this next one and rush off and do this next thing. And it wasn't fair to anyone. And so
Mm-mm.
that caused us to change it. Um, Dang it, I just had something else in my head. Oh, well.
But yeah, so sometimes traditions, change, or your participation in them change, because of divorce, marriage, birth, death, cultural or new learnings. And so it's just remembering why you want to do the tradition, right? Like, why is it important versus this is what we've always done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so there's a way to kind of mindfully celebrate because you can repurpose like the pieces of the tradition that actually match your values. So sometimes when I choose to not participate in something for whatever reason, and sometimes it's because I had to work, right? And sometimes it was a choice, I still feel left out, right? Because I haven't, if you,
Oh,
right? Because if you're not mindful and if you don't replace it, you're not alone when it feels like globally or at least nationally, everybody's celebrating something, or especially, I would always hate leading up to the event and then after the event, what are you doing for this day? And I'd be like, I'd always have something to make up, right? And then the day of comes, and even if I had something I was kind of excited for, it still didn't feel as big or as full as what other people were
wow.
doing. But so that's when, like I said, especially with 2020, like I repurposed the piece of the tradition that I liked and I cared about, match the values. I still found ways to connect with people. I still found ways to like do the fun things that I liked, but it just looked different.
Yeah.
Um, but like the things that I chose to abstain from, and especially like in my 20s and things like that, as everything was changing in the extended family, is like I didn't just want to go through the emotions of a tradition, right? Like that's what was causing the resentment because I wasn't connected to it. But so when you look at what your traditions are based in, you can kind of personalize them, right? Or at least whether it's what you're showing up for or when you like it sounds like you created your own, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I think for us, I mean, we realized, it was like, so Thanksgiving, we do two Thanksgivings, and then Christmas Day, we do two Christmas days at different things. And finally, it was just like, can't do this anymore. And that's when we decided to host Thanksgiving for both sides of the family, which didn't, like I said, that didn't last very long. It just ended up being Rick's side of the family. And then it was finally like two people were coming. And I was like, I'm not cooking. But besides that, the whole Christmas aspect was just way too stressful. And we hit on, let's just have a day for my side of the family sometime in December. No presents. So there's no stress. And then we'd have a theme every year for the food. So like maybe it would be Italian, maybe it would be breakfast, maybe it would be your favorite state fair foods. And then we'd put out like, here you go. And then people would say what they wanted until we did make your own pizza. And then everyone loved that so much that that's just been the
that became the
tradition
thing.
now. Make your own pizza. And so that has been the tradition now for so many years. And it's so stress-free. And if we can't do it before Christmas, we're also okay with doing it in January. Like, we're just like, that's okay. And if people are like, we can't make it, we're like, okay, hopefully we'll see you next time. It's just that kind of a thing.
I
But
love
there
that. So it was
were,
very much go with the flow.
mm-hmm.
And then, one thing to consider when creating or personalizing your tradition is like, what do you want it to be based in? Is it still based in your culture? Is it still based in your religion? Or is it fun or something else? So it sounds like yours went from like whatever reasons you were doing things before to we just want to get together, right? Like
Yeah,
we just
yeah.
want to spend time together as this type of group of people,
Mm-hmm.
specifically, not to celebrate a single person or a wedding or something like that, but like just to celebrate each other. But then do tradition, like create a tradition that we look forward to, which is the pizza, which is that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um I'm constantly trying to create things like that. Or what I brought up a couple episodes ago, my family, we do the lady flannel fire.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where we all get together, and it started as like crafting in a barn, and now it's just we sit around a bonfire wearing flannels and eat good food, right? Like it just like it morphed into something that made us all happy and that we
Mm-hmm.
something to look forward to. My neighbors next door, in January, they do like a friends Christmas event where they get together and they do like a elephant present game, which gets to be some pretty funny gifts, and everybody brings food and they just hang out. And these are people who've known each other since high school. Like
Wow.
they're in their so like it's just a way. And like even now that some of them have started having kids and little kids, like the first few hours, it's kind of an open house style. So from like 5 to 7 or 8, like it's family friendly. And then people either leave or parts of couple leaves, and then like they party like they're in high school still. But I just love that at least once a year they get together and celebrate, and they do it outside of that 6 week window in the States that tends to get so full and bogged down with
Right.
things.
Right.
I see a lot of people on social media post about Friendsgiving, where in addition to Thanksgiving, they'll have like a Thanksgiving with just their friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I've been dying to. So we had one birthday party, God, like 15 years ago, that was a costume party. And I keep trying to get family to do that again, and they just won't do it. And it was so much fun. And so I'm constantly trying to find ways to get people to dress up for things. I would love, I can't wait to start my own family. I have so many ideas for traditions that I will make people do until they're old enough
And when they're little, you can make them do it.
you can, right? Like it's super fun. But like some traditions are as simple as every year we go and we take photos on this day or around this time, and we dress up in this way, right? Like it doesn't have to be a big event.
Mm-hmm.
But or you can create traditions, like we're talking about it now because Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas and Kwanzaa and all those holidays are upon us. Winterfest as it is. But like a Sunday family bike ride, like something you do once a week, how you bless your house every Sunday, like those
Yeah.
are traditions too, right? Like they don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be big extravagant events. But yeah, so with that, I pulled a tarot card. And per usual with me, the first one that came out, I was like, is it? No, I'll keep going. Nope, nope, nope. Okay, it was the first one. So I pulled the Hanged Man, which Amy, you said you immediately had thoughts about.
Yeah, but once I looked at your show notes, you've got them in there. So for me, the hangman is just like, how can you look at something different? How can you just like pause, think about something in a different way, and just look at it in a different way? But what I love too, when you held the card up, I was immediately drawn to like the I don't know if it's actually the sun behind him or if it is more just like this aura around
or a
his head.
halo of sorts. Yeah.
The other thing with the hangman, so it literally is a man. He's hanging by his foot, but his one leg is casually crossed and his arms are behind his back. And he actually looks like, I'm just fine here. And the thing to remember is he is just fine there. And maybe you do need to just like say, hold on. How are we doing this? Could we do it differently?
Yeah. So I think as we start to celebrate the holidays, and especially if you're feeling stressed or a little depressed about them, just think about what is the purpose of the traditions you celebrate? How are you showing up? And if they match your values. And if any of those aren't congruent with what you want your life to be, how can you change that? And I think how you show up is a big part of it too. Like if there's aspects you like and what you don't like how can you help everybody else be more intentional, or how can you show up in a way that does more, like I said earlier, fill your cup.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one more thing. Talk to the other people in your family or, your extended family or friends that are in doing this tradition with you, right? Because sometimes I think we think it's all inside of us and we have to come up with a new way of doing something. But really, if you talk to other people in dialogue, so you're allowing each other to have their thoughts and their feelings heard, more often than not, you can get to a really good solution that way as
Or
well.
at least, especially if it's small, depending on the size of it or the scope of it, But like one thing I do is like, okay, we're doing this event. I really like it when we have this type of food. Are you going to have it or can I bring it? And then I really want to do this event. Like I really want to play a game, right? And then because that's helping manage my expectations, right? So like, and then that's also expressing to other people, you know, like, and then my mom's like, oh yeah, I'll make sure the games are out, right? So that we don't forget, or we'll have a table for that kind of stuff. Because not everybody wants to do that, right? And so then that, you know, then I know like the people who are interested in it and the people who aren't, or I offer to bring a game or something. But try and manage your own expectations, but also ask for your and express your needs too, or ask questions so that you do know what's going on. Yeah.
So next week, next time we are going to talk about boundaries. And the thing with boundaries is I'm glad that like I was sort of in charge of doing the show notes because I really need to learn boundaries.
Ooh.
Yes. But here's the thing with boundaries, right? We teach the people around us how to treat us and what to expect from us. And we do it every single day with what we accept from them. That teaches them how then to continue to treat us, how they treat us, and what to expect from us. So we just have to start thinking about what are we teaching people? And hopefully I can get better at boundaries too.
I love it. What's they say? You learn the best through teaching a topic to somebody else, right?
What you need to learn.
There we go. Well, I'm excited to learn from you. And if this episode spoke to your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.